Part 73. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuen Suya. Chapter 721. Chapter 721, Suji is in danger. In the evening, Xia Ying returned to the dormitory. As soon as Tanguo and Yeziaksun saw Xia Ying coming back, they began to tease Xia Ying and Yu Lingfeng about the large-scale dog slaughtering scene during the day. Xia Ying, you don't even know that just after you and Yu Lingfeng left, all the girls in the studio went crazy, okay? You said you've never seen such a handsome boy before, and you said Yu Lingfeng is flying in the sky. The gods who come down are all kinds of nymphomaniacs. Tanguo said in a loud voice. Of course, Yu Lingfeng is the most handsome boy I have ever seen. When I saw him for the first time, I was as shocked as them. Yeziaksun continued. Besides, I read novels before. I have always been unconvinced by the handsome descriptions of the male protagonist in it. It wasn't until I saw Yu Lingfeng that I realized that the descriptions of appearance in the novel were simply too bad, and could not compare to 1/10 of Yu Lingfeng's charm. Xia Ying's face darkened. Xiao Sun, it turns out that the novels you read all use Yu Lingfeng as the prototype. Yeziaksun was stunned after hearing this, and hurriedly explained, No, of course not Xiao Ying. How dare I? I was just comparing the male protagonist of the novel with Yu Lingfeng. Xia Ying smiled, I'm teasing you. Xia Ying and the others were talking and laughing in the dormitory. It seemed that they were making some noise or something. Suji, who had been staying inside the bed curtain, suddenly opened the bed curtain, put on his coat, opened the door and walked out. Suji closed the door loudly, as if he was deliberately showing his dissatisfaction with Xia Ying and the others for making a noise. After Suji's slamming door closed, Xia Ying and the others fell silent. The originally lively dormitory became silent because of Suji's sudden movement. It's so late, where is Suji going? Tanguo lowered his head and glanced at the watch on his wrist. It was already past 10 o'clock in the evening. I don't know, maybe Suji thought we were too noisy, so she went out to sleep. Yeziaksun whispered, with a sense of self-blame in every word. Xia Ying was just about to say something when suddenly her goo insect bracelet rang again. Xia Ying's mouth that she had just opened closed in silence, and she looked anxiously at the goo worm on her wrist. The ringing of the bells this time was different from the past. In the past, they all rang in unison, but this time, they actually rang one after another, very regularly. Based on the tacit understanding between Xia Ying and the goo insects, this shows that it is not Xia Ying who is in danger, but the people around Xia Ying who are in danger. Xia Ying thought so and subconsciously looked in the direction of the door. Could it be Suji? It was so late now and she was going out as a girl. To be honest, it was inevitable that she would encounter danger. I'm going out for a while and I'll be back soon. Xia Ying stood up and said to them. Ah! Xia Ying, are you going out too? Yeziaksun said, it's so late, what are you going to do? Soon, don't worry about me. Xia Ying said, opened the dormitory door and walked out. Although she is not familiar with Suji, and although she thinks she is strange, she is a senior in the same school and dormitory after all. Knowing that she is in danger but not doing anything, Xia Ying really can't do it. And it was late at night. As a girl, Suji would inevitably encounter some people with evil intentions when walking outside. Not long ago, a female college student disappeared while driving in a taxi at the school next door. Xia Ying didn't want such a thing to happen to Suji. End of this chapter. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuen Suya. Chapter 722. Chapter 722. Another stunner comes. Just after Xia Ying left, Yeziaksun and Tanguo looked at each other, shrugged, and said nothing. Xia Ying walked outside. The lights outside were still bright, but no one knew what was hidden in the alleys where the light and shadow could not shine. Xia Ying raised her hand and stared at the goo insect bracelet. Xiao Qi. Xia Ying screamed, and then a small goo insect flew out. Take me to Suji. Little Gu Chong immediately led the way, and Xia Ying followed behind it. At night, the little goo insect flutters its small wings, and its two lantern-like green eyes are particularly dazzling. However, when viewed from a distance, it only gives people the impression that they are ordinary fireflies, and does not arouse people's suspicion and panic. Xia Ying followed Xiao Qi all the way to the deepest part of the alley. The further Xia Ying walked, the fewer and fewer lights around her. Xia Ying raised her eyes and saw blurry street lights that had been in disrepair. The road around was not smooth, so Xia Ying walked extra cautiously, and from time to time she had to pay attention to the rustling sounds on both sides for fear of lurking danger. Xia Ying didn't know, Su Ji didn't sleep at night. Why did he come to this remote and deserted alley? Before Xia Ying could figure out the reason, she suddenly heard the voices of people speaking more and more clearly. You stinky girl, what are you pulling on? You are lucky that these brothers have taken a liking to you. Why are you pretending to be innocent? That's right, how many college students today are clean, why are they pretending to be noble? This little girl is so pretty, she should be able to fetch a good price, haha. Xia Ying heard the sound and quickly accelerated her pace. At the same time, the goo insect that could give Xia Ying martial arts possessed Xia Ying's head while she was running. And the feeling of power. Xia Ying stood still, and Su Ji was being controlled by 5 men at a deserted corner in the alley. Su Ji knelt on the ground and was controlled by 2 people. At the same time, 3 people stood in front of her and looked at her with playful smiles, saying obscene and vulgar words. Their eyes looked at Su Ji's girlish and tempting body. All over. The men heard the footsteps, turned around and saw Xia Ying. Although the light in the alley was very dark, Xia Ying's fair skin, delicate facial features, and eyes that looked as bright as stars at night made them swallow their saliva. Su Ji's eyes lit up when she saw Xia Ying. Although he instinctively felt the glimmer of hope when he saw someone at first, the light in Su Ji's eyes dimmed immediately after seeing Xia Ying alone. Xia Ying is a weak woman, isn't she looking for death? Now, another stunner has arrived. The group of men thought obscenely. Let her go. Xia Ying's voice was cold, like the sound of a bell falling to the ground on a cold night, clear and loud. Hey, little girl, are you filming? A man with a scar on his face said with a smile. Ha ha ha, that's right, little sister, the night is so intoxicating, why not have some fun with your brothers, eh? As he said that, the 2 men were about to step forward and start touching Xia Ying. However, their hands had just reached out and before they landed on Xia Ying, they were suddenly kicked away by Xia Ying. Moreover, he lay upright in front of the other people, as if provoking. The people were stunned when they saw the 2 strong men wailing on the ground. The distance from Xia Ying to them is a full 2 or 3 meters. This girl who looks thin and weak is too powerful, isn't she? End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yun Suya. Chapter 723. Chapter 723. How did you find me? What's the matter with you two? You two can't beat a little girl in a movie. The man with the scar on his face was full of flesh and blood, and he looked particularly ferocious when he was angry. Boss, no, it's that girl. The man lying on the ground explained weakly, but before he could finish speaking, the scar quickly interrupted his next words. That's enough, it's useless. The 2 men stood up slowly and patted the dust on their bodies. They had just been kicked so far, and now when they stood up, they felt that their bones were about to fall apart. Although they lost the fight, their basic qualities as gangsters and villains still allowed them to continue to provoke Xia Ying with their eyes. Scar twisted his neck in a large circle as if to demonstrate, and his bones made a horrifying cracking sound. As Scar walked towards Xia Ying, he clenched his hand into a fist, and there was a clanking sound from the joints. Scar twitched the corners of his mouth, his eyes filled with murderous intent. From beginning to end, Su Ji remained silent, staring blankly at Xia Ying with a pair of clear eyes. "You little girl, my brother is here to teach you how to behave. If you are good, you will suffer less." However, Xia Ying didn't wait for Scar to finish his words, and kicked him neatly in front of those people. The movement was so fast that the other people didn't react yet, but they didn't react until Scar lay wailing at their feet the next second. The rest of the people did not stand still, and immediately went to help Deo Scar stand up, muttering something in his mouth. "Brother, I said it was this girl's problem. Shut the up." Scar was so angry that he slapped the man the head. The man covered his head in grievance and dared not speak in anger. His grandma, "Did you meet the heroine today?" After Scar stood up, he spat, and then said, "You guys come together, I don't believe I can't beat this bitch." As soon as he finished speaking, Scar led the rest of the people and rushed towards Xia Ying. Several big men covered in tendons ran with an overwhelming momentum, which made people feel very oppressed. However, Xia Ying remained calm and did not look at them. Next, Xia Ying kicked them one by one, like whack-a-mole, and kicked them away one by one. Xia Ying's kick this time was obviously much heavier than the last time. While they were lying there and whispering ouch, Xia Ying quickly ran to Su Ji, took Su Ji's hand, and said firmly, "Go quickly." Su Ji put her hand on Xia Ying's palm, didn't say anything, and just ran out with Xia Ying. Xia Ying ran a few steps when she suddenly remembered something. Then she took out her mobile phone and hurriedly took a photo of the embarrassed group of people, then she pulled Su Ji and ran away. After running to a safe zone, Xia Ying gasped and called Officer Song, "Officer Song, I want to report a crime." While Xia Ying was speaking, Su Ji was right in front of Xia Ying, staring at Xia Ying calmly. Su Ji's eyes were very complicated, an expression that Xia Ying couldn't understand. His eyes were mixed with temptation, doubt, and a little alienation. "Su Ji, why did you run into such a remote alley at night? If I hadn't found you, do you know what would have happened?" Xia Ying's tone was harsh and she accused. Su Ji just asked calmly, "How did you find me?" End of this chapter. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuen Suya. Chapter 724. Chapter 724. I can't help you every time. Xia Ying paused, her eyes flickering unconsciously. Slowly, Xia Ying's brows furrowed. "No, that's not the point, okay." Xia Ying was also puzzled. Why did Su Ji look like someone who had just escaped from death? She was too calm. Although she usually looks as pale as a chrysanthemum, but the current situation is so special, why does she still look so pale? Su Ji did not answer, but lowered his head and glanced at Xia Ying's wrist, the goo insect bracelet. The goo insect bracelet emitted a faint green light. Su Ji looked at it and suddenly frowned. And next, the goo insect on Xia Ying's head flew down and flew into the small bell on the goo insect bracelet. Su Ji witnessed all this, and the seeds of curiosity could no longer be concealed and burst out. "Is it because of these little bugs that you found me, and were you so powerful just now?" It seems that Su Ji really didn't listen to Xia Ying's words. At this juncture, what she cares about is Xia Ying's goo. "Yes, I also hope that you will pay attention to safety in the future and don't let this happen again. I can't help you every time." Xia Ying's tone was very impatient. "So that's it?" Su Ji murmured to himself, and then didn't look at Xia Ying's puzzled face, and didn't even listen to Xia Ying's nagging along the way. However, she eventually returned to the dormitory with Xia Ying honestly. When they returned to the dormitory, the dormitory door was already closed. Xia Ying and the dormitory management aunt talked hard before letting them in. Of course, the aunt was not that easy to talk to, so she still asked Xia Ying and Su Ji to write a letter of guarantee of more than 100 words before putting it in. When Xia Ying and Su Ji returned to the dormitory, neither Tang Guo nor Ye Xiaoxun slept. Two people in the dormitory suddenly ran out in the middle of the night and did not come back. How could they possibly sleep? As soon as Xia Ying and Su Ji came back, Tang Guo and Ye Xiaoxun hurriedly came over. Xia Ying, you are finally back. If you come back 1 minute later, Xiaoxun and I will call the police. Tang Guo blinked her innocent, watery eyes and said to Xia Ying. Xia Ying couldn't laugh or cry when she heard this. She stretched out her hand and pinched Tang Guo's soft little face, comforting her and saying, "Okay, little candy, aren't we back?" Tang Guo pursed his lips and nodded, with tears in his eyes, showing that he was really worried. "Don't go out at this hour in the future. I just heard the sound of the police car. I don't know if something happened again." Ye Xiaoxun continued. "Also, the girl who went missing from the college next door a few days ago has not been found yet. I found it. The school has been very strict recently. Don't go out and try your luck. What if you really meet a bad person?" Indeed, since what happened at the university next door, in order to ensure the safety of students, Imperial University has arranged for people from the student union to check the dormitories every day to ensure that everyone is in the dormitory. When they found Xia Ying's dormitory, Tang Guo and Ye Xiaoxun cleverly said that the two missing names were Tang Guo and Ye Xiaoxun. Then they each took their student ID cards to go to bed, and then they got through. Okay, Xia Ying nodded. Naturally, she heard the siren sound that Ye Xiaoxun mentioned. It was the sound of Officer Song and others coming over. By now, that group of people should be almost caught. End of this chapter. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuan Suya. Chapter 725. Chapter 725. Su Mo is dead. The next day, two major events happened at Imperial University. First, the recent sensational case of missing college girls has been solved, and the murderer is the same group of people who Xia Ying called the police yesterday. When Officer Song and others arrived, they happened to catch them. After torture and explanation, they released the girls who had not had time to sell them. At the same time, 4 other girls from neighboring cities were imprisoned in their small and dark basement. With the help of Officer Song and others, the girls were all safely delivered to their homes. Fortunately, they did not have time to make a big mistake, but what awaited those people was still the highest sanction of the law. The second thing happened that no one expected. Su Mo died. Su Mo is dead. These 4 words were like a bombshell, sparking countless discussions on the originally peaceful campus. Su Mo was one of the 3 well-known campus heroes of Imperial University. He was handsome, charming, and friendly to others. He was the perfect senior in the hearts of all girls and the crush of many girls. But just such a person died suddenly. A boy from a dormitory in Su Mo said that Su Mo went to the public restroom on this floor in the middle of the night to use the toilet and never came back. Because the boy was staying up late playing games and didn't pay much attention. He thought Su Mo was back, but he wasn't. It wasn't until the next day that other students who went to get hot water discovered Su Mo's body in the public toilet. The death was extremely tragic, with bleeding from all the orifices and bruises all over his body. If it weren't for the fact that he was wearing Su Mo's pajamas and slippers, as well as Su Mo's silver hair, others wouldn't have been able to tell that the person whose facial features were so ulcerated and blurred was Su Mo Street. The first classmate who saw Su Mo's body was so frightened that he was trembling when he spoke. Talking about the scene this morning, he was still trembling inside, like an insect crawling over, and he couldn't help but feel numb. Police Officer Song and the others just finished handling the case last night, and received another such case early the next morning. Officer Song was stunned when he heard their description. Such a familiar modus operandi, isn't it the style of a witch? Officer Song didn't care about the fact that he only slept for 2 hours last night, and hurried over with several police officers. On the way, Officer Song called Yu Lingfeng. Yu Lingfeng told Xia Ying, so Xia Ying knew in advance at around 5 o'clock in the morning before the school had time to know. Su Mo is dead. Xia Ying murmured these 4 words, then immediately went downstairs and rushed to the downstairs of the boys' dormitory next door. Sure enough, the dormitory building where Su Mo was located was noisy and surrounded by many people. Looking from above, you can see many police officers wearing uniforms. Su Mo was carried into the police car, covered with a white cloth. When the wind blew by, Xia Ying saw the ulcers and nausea in that corner. Xia Ying felt sour in her stomach and resisted vomiting. Yu Lingfeng also arrived at this time, patted Xia Ying's back and asked in a low voice, "Are you okay?" Yu Lingfeng must be a witch. She killed Su Mo. Only goo insects can achieve such a corpse state. Moreover, it was already like this in one night. This is not comparable to ordinary methods of death such as poisoning. Yu Lingfeng nodded in approval. But what puzzled him was that they had just suspected Su Mo's identity, and Su Mo died the next day. This was a bit too fast, which made Yu Lingfeng think of the low-level shadow hunter who died halfway. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuan Suya. Chapter 726. Chapter 726. That's his fate. At this time, Officer Song walked towards Xia Ying and Yu Lingfeng, his face full of sadness and helplessness. Xia Ying could see the haggardness on Officer Song's face. The rest last night was too short. The whites of Officer Song's eyes were now covered with red bloodshot eyes. He looked clearly listless but still holding on. How about it, brother Yu, what do you think? Police Officer Song is already tired of thinking at the moment. The recent major cases happened to be squeezed into these 2 days. Moreover, the problem of witches has given Officer Song a headache for a long time. Now that Officer Song sees this kind of corpse, the thought of witches makes him feel terrible. How powerful is this woman? She actually killed someone so brazenly in the male dormitory of the university. Do you not take the police and the law into consideration at all? At this moment, the downstairs of the boys' dormitory was already crowded with students, who had just read the news from the school forum. It is now 6 o'clock in the morning. Those who got up early saw it and woke up their roommates who were still sleeping. The news spread from 10 to 10. This matter spread throughout the university campus as quickly as possible like a plague. Including school leadership. Yu Lingfeng looked solemn. It wasn't that he didn't want to find the witch, but he had been investigating for so long without making any progress. When all of them thought that the witch had stopped, she gave her presence at the right time. Although he doesn't know where the witch is now, one thing gradually becomes clear to Yu Lingfeng. The witch wants to deal with Xia Ying. Su Mo wanted to deal with Xia Ying, but he happened to die the next day after his identity was exposed in front of Xia Ying and Yu Lingfeng. The witch must have been afraid that Su Mo would leak any other information, so she took action to deal with him in advance. Moreover, Su Mo is very likely to be with the witch. Check Su Wei's previous contact records, who he is closest to, and whether there is any strange behavior or anything like that. Investigate all of this information clearly. Yu Lingfeng said while Officer Song took notes. Officer Song raised his head and looked at Yu Lingfeng. Do you think the witch has something to do with the Su Mo? And it is very likely that it is an ally. Yu Lingfeng added, the camera in the boys' dormitory building fell out to see if there are any suspicious people. This school is already doing it. Suddenly something like this happened, and people at Taito University are now in panic. Especially in the boys' dormitory, everyone was afraid that something like this would happen to them. The case that Officer Song took action on must not be that simple. Xia Ying and Yu Lingfeng were discussing something. Xia Ying turned her head and saw a familiar figure in the crowd. It was Suji. Suji looked at the police car with an indifferent expression. It was different from the people around her who were either scared, sad, or broken. Suji always had an expressionless face, even giving Xia Ying the illusion that she was in a daze. Xia Ying walked towards Suji. Suji looked at Xia Ying. Suemo is dead, aren't you sad? Xia frowned slightly and looked at Suji. Didn't you say that Suji likes Suemo? Why didn't she feel sad at all? Everyone is going to die. Suji's tone was indifferent, as if he was saying something like my Buddha is compassionate. But he was killed by someone else, he shouldn't have died. Xia Ying argued. Suji's face darkened, he looked at Xia Ying and said word by word, that is his fate, no one can change it. Xia Ying's eyes changed, and she looked in disbelief at Suji, who was analyzing the matter calmly and objectively. End of this chapter. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuan Suya. Chapter 727. Chapter 727. Suji didn't have time to commit the crime. Suji, sometimes I think you are really scary. Xia Ying said this with a cold face. Suji didn't show displeasure because of Xia Ying's words or quickly defended and explained. Instead, he calmly said, I just see it more clearly than you. The person is dead, grief is useless and cannot change any reality. This is Suji's current thinking. And she didn't understand why those people who had never met Suemo were crying beside her, just to tell everyone that she was compassionate, kind-hearted, and even a little familiar with Suemo. No, not really. Most of them were just scared to tears by this incident. They were just afraid that these things would happen to them, so they showed these fragile emotions. Although human beings are emotional animals, they are selfish in the face of life and death. They must choose the opportunities and methods that can save themselves from death. This is something Suji has always believed in. Because she has seen through it all, she naturally feels that there is nothing to be sad about. Xia Ying did not intend to continue chatting with Suji, and they had no way to continue the chat. Xia Ying saw Han Xiu. Han Xiu and Suemo had only been boyfriend and girlfriend for a few days. Xia Ying had read on the gossip forum that Suemo and Han Xiu were together, which was very confusing. She didn't know what Suemo was thinking. They didn't seem to have any contact before, but fortunately they broke up. Although it was only a short-lived emotion that didn't even leave anything called a good memory, Han Xiu still burst into tears along with everyone. Xia Ying saw Han Xiu's fake face crying, and suddenly understood what Suji meant. Some people are indeed just acting out for the occasion. The number of people who really cry for Suemo is probably only a pair of fingers. Xia Ying walked up to Yu Lingfeng, who was still talking to Officer Song about the doubtful points of the case. Why didn't Suemo go to the bathroom in his dormitory? No one was there at the time. Except for a classmate who played games all night, everyone else was already asleep on the bed. Suemo suddenly went to the public restroom on the floor to use the restroom. It was true. So suspicious. Did you make an agreement with the witch, not to go to the toilet but to meet there? Let's wait until the camera comes out to see. That's a witch, she won't be stupid enough to be caught on camera. Yu Lingfeng calmed down, then looked at the crowd, his eyes locked on Suji. She is so conspicuous that she can be seen in the crowd at a glance. It was not only her beautiful appearance that made her stand out, but her calm expression, which neither showed the curiosity of the onlookers nor showed that she came to express condolences to Suemo. She just stood there quietly, as if she was I should have come here and stood in that position. Was Suji in the dormitory last night? Yu Lingfeng suddenly asked Xia Ying. She went out for a while, and I followed her out not long after. Suji met the group of human traffickers yesterday and was caught by them. It was me who brought her back. Xia Ying recalled that she went out and Suji there was a time difference between going out, and he continued, she didn't have time to commit the crime. It was after 10 o'clock when she went out, and it was after 12 o'clock when Suemo had the accident. Since then, Suji has been in the dormitory and has not gone out. End of this chapter. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuan Suya. Chapter 728. Chapter 728, The Witch is also a shadow hunter. Xia Ying knew that Yu Lingfeng was suspicious of Suji. Xia Ying also had some grudge against Suji at the beginning. A girl like Suji who was too special and conspicuous had to be included in the suspicion team. But looking at the matter, Suji did not have the time or opportunity to commit the crime in Sumo's case. Officer Song and I are leaving first. You go to class first, I'll come back to you later. When Yu Lingfeng saw what Xia Ying said, he didn't say anything more. He just reached out and rubbed Xia Ying's head, glanced at Suji, and then turned and left. Xia Ying nodded and watched the police car drive away. When she looked back at Suji again, Suji was no longer there. Xia Ying frowned, and before she had time to think deeply, she was stopped by someone behind her. Xia Ying, Xia Ying. Xia Ying turned around when she heard the sound, and saw the Candy Yeziaksun standing in the crowd not far away, waving to her. Xia Ying smiled and waved back, then walked towards them. Xia Ying approached and found that both Tang Tang Er and Yeziaksun had deep and shallow tears on their faces. Xia Ying, they said that Senior Suemo is dead, is it true? Yeziaksun choked up at the end of his words, thinking that the scene where Suemo taught him to draw yesterday was still vivid in his mind. Suddenly, when he woke up overnight, such bad news came, and no one could accept it. Yeah, the body was just taken away. Xia Ying looked heavy and nodded. Xia Ying didn't know how to tell Yeziaksun and Tanguo that the gentle and warm Senior Suemo in their minds was not actually what they saw. Suemo was planning to attack her yesterday. Whoa, who did it? Senior Suemo is such a nice person. Tanguo choked up and started crying while hugging Xia Ying. Xia Ying patted Tanguo's shoulder. She didn't know what to say to comfort her, so she simply didn't say anything and just patted her gently. Throughout the morning, no one had the energy to attend class. Such a terrible murder occurred in the school, and the murderer has not yet been arrested. At this moment, everyone feels like a plum weight is hanging in their hearts. It is so heavy that it makes people breathless. Xia Ying received a text message from Yu Lingfeng. Suemo is a shadow hunter, his mark is on the top of his head. Yu Lingfeng said that shadow hunters are divided into levels. The higher the mark, the higher the level. Since Suemo is a shadow hunter with a mark on his head, does it mean that he is the best among shadow hunters? When Yu Lingfeng asked 11 Ju to scan Suemo before, 11 Ju only scanned it from top to bottom, leaving a blind spot above his head. Because not only Yu Lingfeng, but also 11 Ju had never seen the shadow hunter with the mark on his head. The mark is on his neck. He is already the most advanced shadow hunter Yu Lingfeng knows. As such a special being, Sumo's abilities should be more than what he has shown. He has been suppressing his abilities, and at the same time, he has been waiting for the opportunity to take action by Xia Ying's side. The problem now is that since Suemo is such a rare shadow hunter, he should be killed by the witch. If the shadow hunter organization knew about it, they would definitely not let the witch go, because it is very difficult to train a shadow hunter like Suemo. If the shadow hunter organization does not take revenge, then there is only one possibility. Witches are also shadow hunters. Killing Suemo was an arrangement of the organization. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuen Suya. Chapter 729. Chapter 729. The Dark Messenger comes out to kill people again. If this is the case, then Xia Ying will be in danger. Shadow hunters like Suemo have been killed, which shows that the witch's ability is superior to Sumo's, and it is very likely that the witch plans to attack Xia Ying herself. Xia Ying couldn't help but shudder when she thought of this, and looked at the flowing clouds and leisurely scene outside the window. This world is so beautiful, but there are so many unknown dark sides hidden under such a beautiful surface. At noon in the dormitory, Xia Ying received a video from Chu Shenxiu. Chu Shenxiu went to see Jun Chenai in the United States. Jun Chenai's condition is much better now. At least it doesn't hurt so much when he talks, and he can occasionally go outside to bask in the sun. Xia Ying looked at Jun Chenai, who was getting better and better through the video, and looked at his careless smile, and suddenly all the unpleasantness of today faded away a lot. Chu Shenxiu and Jun Chenai were fighting on the other side of the screen. Xia Ying took a deep breath and finally made up her mind before speaking coldly. Big turtle dove, Suemo is dead. Jun Chenai next to him was so noisy that Chu Shenxiu didn't hear clearly. He just vaguely heard Xia Ying mentioning Sumo's name, so he asked again, "What's wrong with Suemo?" "Died." At this moment, Chu Shenxiu heard it clearly, and his face immediately darkened as he was laughing and joking with Jun Chenai. The bright light in his eyes also dimmed at this moment. Chu Shenxiu suddenly pulled the corners of his mouth and smiled, as if he was lying to himself. He said to Xia Ying, who was extremely calm and did not look like he was joking at all, "Is it a trick Suemo came up with?" Xia Ying did not respond. That expressionless face said everything. The next second, Chu Shenxiu suddenly stood up with a sullen face and disappeared from the screen. Xia Ying knew that Chu Shenxiu must be very sad. Chu Shenxiu and Xia Ying had said that Suemo was his only good friend in college. Now, this good friend has left him forever. Chu Shenxiu couldn't even ask the reason. Even if he knew how he died, what could he do? Suemo would never come back. Jun Chenai saw that Chu Shenxiu was gone and Xia Ying's face on the screen was not good looking, so he put on a handsome face and became unhappy. Jun Chenai's dark pupils were stained with moist mist, and his thin lips were slightly pouted, making him look very cute. Xia Ying looked at the childish Jun Chenai and couldn't help but raise the corners of her mouth, revealing a faint smile. Jun Chenai saw Xia Ying smiling, and for some reason, he actually laughed as well. Xia Ying was amused by Jun Chenai again and muttered to herself, "I don't know if you don't remember anything, whether it's good or bad." Jun Chenai just smiled and said nothing when he heard Xia Ying's whisper. Xia Ying hung up the video, and Jianyin's called again. Xia Ying was helpless, but still pressed the answer button. "What's the matter?" "I saw the news. The Dark Messenger came out to kill people again, right?" What came from the other end of the phone was Jianyin's swirring voice, which made Xia Ying's eardrums feel uncomfortable. Xia Ying frowned, as if she suddenly thought of something. The messenger of darkness that Jianyin's talks about every day is probably the shadow hunter. "Yes, so is there anything you, the son of light, can do?" Xia Ying continued. "Don't you always want to save mankind?" End of this chapter. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuen Suya. Chapter 730. Chapter 730. Suemo is probably not an orphan. Every time the Dark Messenger comes out, it's not just about killing one person. When Jianyin's on the other end of the phone said this, his entire voice became hoarse and low. It was completely different from his usual tone of voice, which made Xia Ying feel an inexplicable sense of distance. "Jianyin's, do you know something?" Xia Ying asked. Although Jianyin's looks quite average, as a person who has seen so many shadow hunters killing people and still survived safely, I have to say that he is also a weirdo. Perhaps he knew much more about shadow hunters than Xia Ying. "My guess. The tone of Qianyin's last sentence dropped, with a naughty ending. Xia Ying was furious after hearing this. Is this guy playing with her? He acted so serious and solemn, but in the end he said he was just guessing. It's really speechless. Have you been itchy lately, Qianyins? Xia Ying said angrily. Qianyins curled his lips and said, don't doubt the judgment of my son of light. Even if I guessed it, it would be 99% correct. And let me tell you. Xia Ying rolled her eyes and hung up the phone before Qianyins finished speaking. This guy is really hopeless. Qianyins looked confused when the phone was hung up. After grunting twice to express his dissatisfaction, he stopped worrying about it and was dragged to dance by the dance teacher. Dancing is really not something humans can learn. Who invented it to make things difficult for humans with uncoordinated limbs like him? To him, this was purgatory on earth, and he was being tortured to death. Well, it's true that celebrities are not just as glamorous on the outside, and not everyone can bear and imagine the sweat they put in behind them. Sumo's incident has been making a big fuss in the media recently, and the school also said that it will give an explanation to the public. However, the most critical issue at the moment is that the school had already prepared to give Sumo's family a huge compensation. After all, Suemomo's incident happened in the school, and the school needs to bear this responsibility. However, the school waited for a long time and did not wait for Sumo's family members to show up. Not only that, even the contact information of the family members left by Suemo could not be contacted. No one heard. It's really strange. When a child dies at home, do these parents not care at all? Because it was the first case of a student being murdered on campus at Taito University, and because of the popularity of Taito University, Sumo's case made international news, so it was impossible for Sumo's family in country M not to know about it, and why? Not answering the phone is also a very suspicious point. After Suemo died, his so-called relatives suddenly lost contact. I'm afraid Suemo is not an orphan. Police officer Song flicked the ashes from his cigarette and said thoughtfully. Yu Lingfeng sat aside and did not answer. If he wasn't an orphan, why wouldn't there be a relative in the world who could come and collect his body? Moreover, no one came to collect the money, which shows that there is a high possibility that he is an orphan. Police officer Song continued. Half a month has passed since this incident happened, but the witch still has no clue. She can't be found, just can't be found. Even if they waited for her to come out again, they would not expect that they would just meet the next Suemo. A weird corpse, coupled with the murderer who died without evidence, this is the witch's style of committing crimes. Her crime was so sophisticated that there were almost no flaws. End of this chapter.